My sister coveted the inheritance. Framed me in court. My parents backed her. Minutes later, a man walked in, turning them pale. You know, there are moments in life that hit you so hard, they rearrange your entire understanding of family. For me, that moment came in a courtroom. Minutes after my sister tried to steal everything my grandfather left behind, and my own parents backed her up. I walked into that courtroom, heart pounding, but trying to keep a neutral face. My sister, Victoria, was already there, looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. A tailored cream coat over black, that quiet luxury look that somehow makes people think you're inherently trustworthy. Her hair was perfect, not a single strand out of place. Her face was dry, not a tear in sight. And when she glanced at me, her eyes weren't filled with grief. They were cold, calculating. The bailiff called the case, droning through the names like a grocery list. Victoria practically leaped to her feet before the final syllable was out. It wasn't about honoring Grandpa. It was about claiming his estate. Her attorney, a slick, smarmy guy with an expensive watch and a voice like melted butter, glided to the counsel table. He slid a thin stack of papers across the polished wood, and it felt less like a gesture and more like a blade. "Your Honor," he purred, "we're moving for immediate transfer of the estate to my client, effective today." Behind him, my parents nodded in perfect unison, like they'd rehearsed it in a mirror. My mom's hands were folded solemnly, as if she were at church, while my dad stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. He looked at me like I was nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle in his business meeting. The judge, though, didn't look at them. He looked at me. "Mr. Hale," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Do you object?" Victoria's lips twitched, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement, as if she couldn't wait to hear me beg, to watch me crumble. I did not. I straightened my back, rested my hands flat on the table, and willed my voice not to shake. "Yes," I answered. "I object." Her attorney gave me a faint, patronizing smile. "On what grounds?" he inquired, his tone dripping with the certainty that he was about to walk right over me. I didn't give him an argument. "Not yet. I want to wait until the last person arrives," I told them. The judge blinked once, slowly. "The last person," he repeated. I nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Victoria let out a short, humorless laugh. "This is ridiculous," she scoffed. "There is no one else." My father finally turned his head, just slightly, in that familiar way he used to when I was a teenager, reminding me I was embarrassing the family. "You always do this," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. The judge leaned back, adjusting his glasses. "Mr. Hale," he said, a note of warning in his voice. "This is probate court, not a stage. If you have an objection, it must be legal." "It is legal," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "But it is not my place to explain." Victoria's attorney approached again, his voice like silk. "Your Honor," he began, "we're requesting an emergency appointment because Ms. Hale has been uncooperative. There are assets that must be protected, and my client is the responsible party." Responsible. That word was a weapon in my family, always used to mean, give us control and don't ask questions. My mother sighed softly, a performance of distress at my supposed immaturity. "She's grieving," she told the judge. "She doesn't understand how these things work." Victoria's eyes stayed on me, bright and cold. "I'm just trying to keep everything from falling apart," she said, ostensibly to me, but clearly for the judge's benefit. Grandpa would want it handled properly. I just stared at her, thinking about how quickly she'd found a lawyer, how fast this petition had appeared, and how polished my parents looked, sitting behind her like a backup choir. The judge turned a page in the case file. "This petition requests full authority over the estate," he informed me. "It alleges the respondent is unfit to participate and may interfere." Victoria's attorney nodded smugly. "Correct. And you want me to grant it today?" the judge stated, his gaze fixed on the attorney. "Yes, Your Honor," the attorney responded. "Effective immediately." The judge looked at me again. "Mr. Hale," he said, "what's your objection?" I kept my posture constant, unyielding. "My objection is that they're asking you to act without the full record," I explained. Victoria laughed, sharper this time. "There is no hidden record," she retorted. "He died. This is what happens." The judge's expression remained unchanged, but his patience was clearly thinning. "Miss Hale," he informed my sister, his voice cutting, "you will not speak out of turn." My father's lips tightened. My mother's eyes narrowed, offended by the correction. Victoria's attorney tried to salvage the situation with politeness. "Your Honor, if Ms. Hale wishes to delay, we object. The estate cannot wait." I didn't look at him. My gaze was fixed on the judge. "It will not be a delay," I stated. "It'll be a few minutes." The judge exhaled, looking towards the courtroom doors, clearly weighing whether to humor me. "Whom are we waiting for?" he asked. I gave him the simplest truth I could. The person who actually controls the inheritance. Victoria's face tightened for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty. "That's me," she said automatically, but then caught herself when the judge's gaze flicked her way. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Miss Hale," he told me, "if this is a tactic—" "It isn't," I answered. "I'm asking you to let the record arrive before you sign anything." A beat of silence hung in the air, thick with anticipation. Then the courtroom doors opened, not with a dramatic swing, but a clean, controlled push, as if someone was doing something with a purpose. A man walked in, wearing a black suit so plain it resembled a uniform. No flashy tie, no expensive jewelry. In his hand, only an envelope and a calm, utterly neutral expression, as if he didn't care who in this room had money. He walked directly to the clerk's desk, not sparing a glance for my parents or my sister. He held up the envelope, spoke clearly, and mentioned my name. "Ms. Hale." The judge blinked, reached for his glasses again, and regarded the envelope as if it were an alien artifact in his courtroom. The man in the black suit didn't raise his voice, didn't explain himself. He simply placed the envelope on the clerk's desk with one hand and stated, "This is for the court from the trustee." The judge opened the envelope, not like regular mail, but with a cautious respect. He held it between two fingers, turned it once, and reread the return address, as if expecting the ink to change before his eyes. Then he ripped it open. No flourish, just a clean, decisive tear, as if he wanted the paper to stop pretending it was more important than what was inside. The courtroom fell into an oppressive silence. I could hear Victoria's attorney subtly shifting his weight. The judge began pulling out a single, folded document. Thick stock, an embossed seal in the corner, and a signature block that seemed far too formal for what my family had treated as a casual family meeting. As he scanned the top line, his jaw tightened. Then he read the sender aloud. Hawthorne National Bank, Trust Department. Victoria's face flickered for a second, a brief crack in her composure, before she locked it back down. She'd spent her entire life working with money. Hearing a bank's name in open court should have made her appear powerful, in control. Instead, it made her look like she'd been caught. The judge continued reading. "This is a notice of trust administration," he informed me. "It states the decedent's assets were placed into a revocable trust, and that the trust became irrevocable upon death." Victoria's lawyer shot to his feet. "Your Honor, we're in probate." The judge didn't even look up. "Sit down," he instructed. He turned another page. "And this," he said softly, "is a certification of trust identifying the trustee." He paused again, as if the next line directly contradicted his understanding of how these lawsuits were supposed to work. Then he read it. "Successor, trustee, Hawthorne National Bank Trust Department." My parents stiffened. They craved control, but a bank isn't concerned with control in the same way families are. A bank cares about documents, terms, and risk. Victoria's attorney tried to recover, feigning confidence. "Your Honor, even if there is a trust, probate still has jurisdiction over the estate." The judge finally looked up, his gaze chillingly direct. "Counsel," he said, addressing the lawyer, "your motion requested all of the inheritance, effective immediately." He touched the paper once with his finger. "This trust certification states in plain language that the probate estate is minimal and the majority of assets are held in trust." He turned to face the clerk. "Mark this as received," he stated. Then he looked at Victoria, not as a sister or a family member, but as a petitioner who had just attempted to seize something that wasn't hers. "Ms. Hale," he asked, "did you know your grandfather established a trust with a corporate trustee?" Victoria raised her chin, defiant. "He was influenced," she explained. "He didn't understand what he was signing." The judge didn't dignify her feelings with a disagreement. He simply held up the next page. "This notice includes a copy of the trust's execution affidavit and the list of witnesses," he said. "It also includes an attorney certification that the decedent signed with full capacity." My father's mouth tightened. My mother's eyes narrowed, searching for a new angle. And then the judge came across a line that made him whisper, "That can't be in there in the first place." He read it slowly, deliberately, so no one could later claim they misunderstood. No contest clause was triggered. Any beneficiary who files a petition to seize trust assets in violation of the terms forfeits the distribution. Victoria's attorney's face was utterly drained of color. Victoria's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed, as if she was trying to intimidate the paper into backing down. My mother unclasped her hands for the first time, her composure finally breaking. The judge looked up. "Counsel," he informed Victoria's attorney, "you filed a motion for the immediate transfer of all inheritance to your client." "Yes, Your Honor," the attorney replied, his voice barely a whisper. "You understand," the judge said, his voice hard, "that this clause is enforceable. The act of filing your motion may already have resulted in forfeiture." The lawyer swallowed, his throat visibly bobbing. "Your Honor, we dispute the validity." The judge cut him off. "You can dispute it," he said, "but you don't get to pretend it isn't there." He looked at me again. "Mr. Hale," he said, "you asked to wait until the last person arrived. Was this the person?" "Yes," I answered. Despite the fact that my pulse had risen to my throat, my voice remained level. "The trust department is the trustee. They have control over the distribution." The man in the black suit, still standing near the clerk as if he were part of the furniture, spoke for the first time. "Your Honor," he said, his voice calm and clear, "I am not here to argue. I am here to provide notice and confirm the trustee's position." The judge gestured once. "State it," he replied. The man didn't look at my parents. He didn't look at Victoria. He looked directly at the judge. "The trustee does not recognize the petitioner's request," he informed the court. "The trustee will not distribute assets to anyone based on the motion filed today. The trustee will administer according to the trust terms and has asked the court to dismiss any attempt to seize trust-controlled assets through probate." Victoria snapped. "You can't just—" The judge raised his hand, cutting her off instantly. "Miss Hale," he exclaimed sharply, "you will not speak out of turn." Victoria clamped her mouth shut, but her breathing pattern changed. Faster now, shallower. Her lawyer stood again, attempting to regain some ground. "Your Honor, at minimum, we move to compel production of the full trust. We question whether my client was improperly removed or whether there is undue influence by the respondent." The judge's eyes did not soften. "Undue influence is a serious allegation," he told the lawyer, "and you just watched audio evidence of attempted coercion aimed at the decedent, which did not come from the respondent." My father's jaw twitched, a tiny, involuntary movement. The judge turned back to the man in black. "Has the trustee delivered the trust instrument to counsel?" he asked. "Yes," the man replied. "A complete copy was delivered to both sides the previous afternoon via certified service." My mother's head snapped towards Victoria's attorney like a whip. The previous afternoon, implying they knew or should have known, and thus filed anyway. The judge allowed that fact to sink in for a moment before looking at Victoria with thinly veiled disgust. "Miss Hale," he asked, his voice low, "did you get the trust documents the previous afternoon?" Victoria's lips parted, and for the first time, she appeared less like a calculating executive and more like a person caught in a trap. "Aye," she began. Her attorney quickly intervened. "Your Honor, we received a packet." But the judge interrupted him. "Counsel," he said, his voice heavy with warning. "If you received a packet containing a no-contest clause and still filed a motion demanding all inheritance effective immediately, I want you to understand what that looks like to this court." The attorney stood still, utterly speechless. The judge turned to face the clerk. "Set a hearing," he insisted, "on sanctions, and I want the trustee's letter entered into the record." Then he looked directly at Victoria, his tone turning colder. "And Miss Hale," he said, "if you are a named beneficiary and you triggered forfeiture today, you may have cost yourself more than you intended." Victoria's face tightened into something unpleasant, a mask of anger. Her eyes met mine, and the hatred there wasn't just for money. It was about how the institution she expected to crown her had just labeled her a risk. Then, she did what she always did when she couldn't win on paperwork. She tried to win with a new story. "Your Honor," she said abruptly, her voice loud, turning to the bench with practiced urgency, "I need to put something on the record." The judge's eyes narrowed. "What?" he stated, his voice sharp. Victoria looked at me directly and said the one word my parents had been saving like a bullet: elder abuse. The judge's expression changed, not because he believed her, but because the court now had to decide whether she had proof or if she was about to commit career suicide with another false allegation. "Elder abuse," Victoria said louder, as if volume could convert accusation into evidence. My mother's face softened immediately into a performance of grief. My father leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing, as if this was the plan they had been waiting to implement. Her attorney stood next to her, looking like he'd just been handed an emergency exit. "Your Honor," he stated, "we request an immediate investigation." The respondent isolated the decedent, restricted access, and coerced him into signing documents that benefited her. The judge did not react like a daytime television audience. He acted like a judge. He leaned forward. "Counsel, these are serious allegations. What evidence do you have today?" Victoria didn't blink. "Witnesses," she said, gesturing behind her. 3 relatives stood awkwardly in the back rows, as if they'd been drafted. My aunt and a cousin I rarely spoke with. Their expressions were tense, their gazes shifting away from me. My mother nodded encouragingly at them, silently coaching. The judge looked at them unimpressed. "Witnesses can testify," he said, "but I need something concrete. Medical reports, previous complaints, police reports, APS involvement. Anything." Victoria tightened her jaw. "He didn't want to embarrass the family," she explained quickly. "He was scared." The judge's expression remained flat. "Then explain why he called emergency services himself." A heavy silence filled the room. Victoria attempted to pivot. "He was confused," she explained. "He didn't know what he was doing." The judge returned his gaze to the bank's envelope. "Ah," he said slowly, "this trust was executed with a capacity affidavit and witnesses." A voice cool and precise replied, "That's not confusion. That's formalized intent." My father's attorney rose, his voice smooth. "Your Honor, we also have evidence the respondent had access to accounts and controlled communications." My attorney, Daniel Mercer, rose immediately. "Objection," he stated. "This is argument without foundation." The judge raised a hand. "Counsel," he asked Victoria's attorney, "do you have that evidence here?" Victoria's lawyer hesitated slightly. Then he did what lawyers do when they have a narrative but not the evidence. "We would request discovery," he said. The judge's eyes hardened. "Discovery is not a fishing license," he explained. You do not accuse someone of elder abuse in open court as a strategy to seize assets held in trust. Victoria's cheeks flushed crimson. It's not a strategy, she retorted. The judge leaned back. Then bring the evidence, he said. Not theatrical relatives. My mom's voice trembled. Practiced. Your Honor, she replied. She kept us away. She made him hate us. The judge took one look at her. Ma'am, he replied, this is not family therapy. Then he focused his attention on the one person in the room who had no emotional stake, only fiduciary responsibility. He addressed the man wearing black. Sir, he asked, does the trustee have any documentation of concerns about undue influence or abuse? The man didn't hesitate. No, Your Honor, he replied. The trustee conducted a standard intake. The decedent and counsel met privately. He confirmed his intention. The trustee received a letter of instruction and supporting materials. The judge's gaze became sharper. Supporting materials, he asked. Yes, the man responded. A log and a statement. The decedent wanted them to be preserved. Victoria's head snapped up. Which statement? She demanded. The judge didn't look at her. Provide it, he instructed the man. The man reached into another envelope he was holding. One I'd overlooked because it was thinner and unmarked, and handed it to the clerk. The clerk handed it to the judge. The judge opened it and took out a single-page letter. He read quietly for several seconds, his eyes moving with careful attention. Then he looked up at me, not warmly, but with the weight of something he recognized. Mr. Hale, he said, did you know your grandfather prepared a written statement anticipating the allegations made today? Yes, I replied quietly. He told me he did, but I didn't know what he wrote. Victoria's breathing had changed again. Her nails dug into the counseling table. The judge examined the top of the letter. Then he read the first line out loud. If you are reading this in court, it means my son and his family tried to take my estate by accusing my granddaughter. My mother made a sound as if she had been stabbed. My father's face became rigid, mask-like. Victoria's lawyer sat down slowly, as if he'd just realized he was standing on a trapdoor. The judge continued reading, not all of it, but enough to make the record unmistakable. He read that my grandfather had asked me to move in following his fall. He read that he had met with counsel alone. He read that he had established the trust because he was afraid of pressure tactics and quick signature demands. The judge then reached a point where his lips pressed together. He read it once in silence. Then he read aloud. On the night I called 911, my son brought a mobile notary to my house to obtain new signatures. I refused. I asked for witnesses. If they call it elder abuse, they are projecting their own behavior. The courtroom was dead quiet. Not a whisper, not a cough. Victoria sat motionless, and I noticed her eyes flickering, as if she was desperately trying to find a way to survive the record, to rewrite this moment. My father's attorney stood slowly, his voice cautious. Now, Your Honor, he replied, we object to hearsay. The judge cut him off. It's a statement of intent from the decedent, offered to show his state of mind, according to him, and it's consistent with the dispatch audio. He held the letter up slightly. This court is not going to entertain a last-minute elder abuse allegation used to seize assets held by a corporate trustee, he said, every word carefully chosen. If you want to file a petition with evidence, you can do so, but not on the same day, not like this. Victoria's attorney swallowed hard. Your Honor, he said, we'd like to withdraw the motion. The judge's gaze stayed cold. You can't withdraw consequences, he replied, but you can stop digging. He turned to face the clerk. Dismiss the motion, he said, and set an order to show cause hearing regarding sanctions for the filing and the false assertions made today. My mother's face went utterly pale. My father's jaw clenched, a muscle jumping in his cheek. Victoria's mask finally cracked. So, she gets everything, she snapped, her voice barely controlled. The judge didn't flinch. The trust gets administered per the terms, he said. And yes, Miss Hale's petition to seize all inheritance, effective immediately, is denied. Victoria's hands shook now. She tried to hide it by gripping the edge of the table. The man in black spoke again, calm like a machine, stating the next step. The trustee will suspend any distributions to parties who triggered the no contest clause until further review, he said. We will follow the trust language. Exactly. Victoria's head snapped toward him. Suspend, she hissed. No, that's... He didn't argue. That is, he said simply. The judge leaned forward and delivered the last sentence Victoria did not expect to hear. Miss Hale, he said, his voice like ice. You walked into this courtroom acting like it was already yours. Now you will leave with nothing decided in your favor today, and you will answer for the way you tried to obtain it. Victoria's eyes turned to me again, full of hatred and humiliation. Then she whispered, barely audible, This isn't over. And that's when the bailiff stepped in close, quiet, almost unprofessional, and spoke to the judge in a low tone. The judge's expression changed slightly as he listened. He nodded once. Then he looked directly at my father. Mr. Hale, he replied, remain seated. My father froze. Why? He asked, his voice strained. The judge's voice stayed flat. Because, he said, I've just been informed there's a deputy in the hallway with paperwork for you, and it isn't from this court. My father's face tightened, a sickening gray color spreading across it. The courtroom doors opened again, and a uniformed deputy walked in, holding a document with a bold header across the top. I couldn't read it from my seat, but I saw my father's face turn ashen as the deputy said, Sir, you've been served. My father didn't stand. He didn't demand respect. He just stared at the deputy, like the badge had suddenly become heavier than his money. What is this? He asked, his voice tight. The deputy held the packet out. Service of process, he said. You can accept it here or in the hallway. My father's attorney leaned toward him and whispered something urgent. My father ignored it and snatched the papers, flipping the first page with shaking fingers. His eyes moved across the header. Then he froze because this wasn't probate. This was criminal. The judge watched him read, his expression flat. Mr. Hale, he said, this court has nothing to do with that paperwork, but I will remind you that you are still under oath from earlier testimony. My father swallowed hard. Your Honor, he said, forcing a calm he didn't feel. This is harassment. My family is being targeted because my daughter... The judge cut him off. Stop, he said. Your daughter is not the one who called emergency services to report a coercion attempt. Your daughter is not the one who filed a false motion in this court. Your daughter is not the one who attempted to seize trust assets held by a corporate fiduciary. My mother's mouth tightened. We were trying to protect the family, she whispered, a desperate plea. The judge didn't soften. Then you protected it into a referral, he said. The deputy shifted his stance slightly, and I realized he hadn't come alone. 3 uniforms stood near the doors, quiet, not approaching, just present in the way law enforcement gets present when they expect people to run or explode. Victoria's attorney cleared his throat. Your Honor, he said carefully, we would request a brief recess to confer with our clients. The judge looked at him like he was utterly exhausted by the idea of more talking. You can confer, he said, but this motion is dismissed. The trustee will administer the trust, and I will see counsel back for the order to show cause hearing. He picked up his pen, already turning away from them. Then he stopped and looked back once, like he'd remembered something important. One final matter, he said. The room stilled again. He addressed the man in the black suit. Sir, he said, does the trustee request any protective order? Yes, Your Honor, the man responded immediately. Given the attempted interference, the trustee requests an order prohibiting the petitioners from contacting financial institutions, custodians, or third parties in an attempt to access trust assets, and prohibiting harassment of the primary beneficiary. Victoria's head snapped up. Harassment? She scoffed. The judge's gaze shifted to her. Miss Hale, he said, his voice dangerously low. You just accused someone of elder abuse in open court without providing any evidence. You are in no position to scoff. He turned back to the trustee's representative. Granted, he said. Draw it. I will sign that today. My mother's face was drained, utterly devoid of color. You can't keep us from our own daughter, she said softly, her voice shaking. The judge's voice remained flat. You can keep yourselves from committing misconduct, he told her. Daniel Mercer leaned in and whispered, This is the cleanest order we could have hoped for. I nodded once, but my gaze remained fixed on my parents. My father now held the criminal paperwork in his hands, and I could see the calculation changing behind his eyes. No remorse, just damage control. The judge called the proceedings to a close. The court has recessed, he said. My mother lunged toward me in the aisle as the gavel fell. Not physically, but close enough that the air shifted around us. You did this, she hissed, her eyes wild. You ruined your father. I did not flinch. He ruined himself, I remarked quietly. Victoria stepped in, her voice a tight whisper, her eyes glinting. You're going to lose everything, she stated. I'll make sure you do. I looked at her and kept my voice calm. You've already tried, I replied, and the trustee didn't even have to raise its voice. Victoria's expression twisted. Do you believe you're safe because a bank sent a suit? She spat. I leaned in slightly, close enough that she could hear me over the hallway noise. I think I'm safe because Grandpa planned, I claimed, and because you can't bully a record. Her lips parted, and I could see her preparing to scream. Instead, she acted coldly. She turned her phone face down, as if she had just sent something she didn't want anyone to see. Daniel noticed it too. His gaze moved from her hands, then to mine. Don't engage, he muttered. We're leaving. We walked out via the side exit. The courthouse air outside was sharp and bright, as if it didn't care what families did to one another inside. Daniel paused on the curb and looked me in the eyes. Here's the concrete ending you wanted, he said quietly. Trust controls everything. The petition was dismissed. The no contest clause has been triggered and will be enforced. Your parents do not have access, and the court has just signed an order preventing interference. I nodded. And my sister? I asked. Daniel's mouth tightened. If she's a named beneficiary, she likely forfeited today, he told me. That's what her lawyer is realizing right now. We stood there for a moment, simply breathing. Daniel's phone vibrated. He examined it, and his expression changed in the same way it does at an airport when the officer's tone shifts. What? I asked. Daniel held the screen up. A notification. Official short. Hawthorne National Bank's Trust Department. Security alert. Attempted access has been blocked. My stomach turned cold because the hearing had ended. The order had been signed, but someone was still trying to touch the money. Daniel's voice became quiet. They're doing it right now, he explained. I stared at the alert, and at that moment I understood. Victoria hadn't turned her phone face down to keep from screaming. She had turned it face down as she moved. Daniel didn't waste a second. He called the trust department while we were still standing on the curb, the courthouse doors behind us, and my parents still inside, pretending they hadn't just been humiliated. A woman responded with the steady, rehearsed calm you expect from people whose job it is to prevent disasters. Hawthorne Trust, she explained. This line is recorded. How can I help you? This is Daniel Mercer, he said. Counsel for Marianne Hale. I've just received a security alert. The attempted access has been blocked. I need specifics. There was a brief pause, then the sound of keys tapping. The woman's tone sharpened slightly. Not panic, just procedure. Yes, she answered. There was an attempt to log into the beneficiary portal. It failed the dual authentication process. Immediately after that, an attempt was made to change the phone number on file. My mouth went dry. Change it to who? I asked. The trust officer didn't respond directly. She asked Daniel, Are you giving me permission to disclose the attempted change request data to your client? Yes, Daniel replied instantly. The trust officer proceeded. The attempted phone number change request was submitted from a device associated with the petitioner, Victoria Hale. I closed my eyes for a half-second because I could see it perfectly, her flipping her phone face down in court, as if she were hiding shame, when in fact she was concealing action. Daniel's voice remained calm. Did she authenticate? He asked. No, the trust officer responded. The system denied the request. A manual flag has been placed. The distribution status has been changed to hold due to fraud risk. Pending review. Daniel let out a slow breath. Good, he said. Stop all changes. No changes to portal contacts, phone numbers, emails, or addresses without verified in-person identification. Already done, she said, and a report has been generated. Daniel's jaws tightened. Send that report to my office, he requested. And note, there's an active court order issued today prohibiting interference. Understood, she replied. We have a court order on file. The trustee will comply. The call ended, and the silence felt sharp. Daniel looked at me. That alert, he said. This is exactly why corporate trustees exist. They aren't bullied. They aren't guilt-tripped. They log and block. I nodded slowly. So, she tried to get in, I responded, and failed. Yes, he responded. And she just created a record that will follow her into sanctions. We drove straight to Daniel's office, not for drama, but for one reason, to secure everything. While my family was still spinning, Daniel had me sign a brief written instruction requiring all trust communications to be routed through counsel, no direct contact from family members, and any attempted changes to be treated as fraud. He then sent the bank's security report to the judge's clerk with a simple note. Within a few minutes of the court recess, attempted access blocked. No threats or speeches, just a timestamp. After a short while, Daniel's assistant entered and announced. The trustee representative called back. The man in the black suit, Hawthorne's representative, appeared via video call. Same calm expression, same plain suit, like a uniform. Ms. Hale, he said, I'd like to make something very clear. I did not speak. I let him. The trust will distribute only according to the trust terms, he added. There will be no exceptions based on family pressure. There will be no temporary transfers. There will be no advancements. He looked down at a note, then back up. And as a result of today's petition and attempted portal interference, the trustee has formally determined that Victoria triggered the no contest clause. Her distribution has now been forfeited pending court confirmation. My chest tightened, part relief, part disbelief. Daniel inquired, and the parents? The trustee representative's face did not change. Richard and Elaine Hale's contingent distributions are under review, he said. Given their participation in the petition and coordinated behavior, the trustee is treating their involvement as interference. He paused and then said, We will file a declaration with the court. That was when it felt complete, not because it was emotionally satisfying, but because it was administratively final. 10 days later, the court heard the sanctions case. Victoria's attorney did not make eye contact with anyone. He stood up, cleared his throat, and said, Your Honor, we withdraw all contested claims and apologize to the court. The judge did not smile. He did not accept the apology as if it erased the attempt. He imposed sanctions for the bad faith filing, ordered Victoria to pay a portion of her attorney's fees, and most importantly, issued an order acknowledging the trustee's enforcement of the no contest clause. He then addressed my parents directly. Your daughter did not take anything, he told them. Your father's documents took control from you, and you reacted with manipulation. This court will not take part in that. For the first time, my mother shed genuine tears. Not grief, but a visceral loss of control. My dad did not cry. He just stared at the floor as if looking for a loophole. There was not one. Within 3 weeks, Hawthorne National Bank finished the initial formal distribution under the trust terms. The house was still protected by title. The remaining assets were managed using receipts, confirmations, and a paper trail that my family could never erase. And as for my sister, her wealth did not shield her from a forfeiture clause she had ignored because she believed courts existed to reward confidence. They do not. Courts reward records. On the night the final confirmation email arrived, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the same folder that my grandfather had created years before. Not to repeat the pain, but to remember the lesson. When people try to erase you with a story, you don't fight back with another story. You fight the story with evidence. 17 days after the hearing, the court entered the trustee's declaration into the record. Hawthorne completely shut down the trust. There will be no changes without in-person verification. My sister's forfeiture was upheld under the no contest clause. My parents' family settlement request was denied, and the sanctions order required them to reimburse legal fees related to the false filing. Within 21 days, the trustee completed the first distribution exactly as written, and the deeded property remained protected outside of probate. No more motions, no more emergencies. Just the quiet, uncompromising power of a meticulously crafted record.